It's Saturday, baby.
Yep.
Well, hi guys, this is Ask a DM round 2. I am back, Blake, Tom's back, and of course we're joined by Josho.
How you guys doing?
I can introduce myself. But yes, we are unprofessional DMs asking amateur questions in a chaotic environment.
All right. Well, to start off, does anyone have any questions to begin this with? All right.
What's your favorite weapon to pair with a barbarian?
Ooh. In my opinion, great swords are called great swords for a reason. Just saying. You played a barbarian last. What do you think?
Well, just for joke purposes, stop hammer time.
Yeah.
No, any great weapon that's two-handed and provides that 1.5.
Executioner's Axe from 4th edition. It lowers the damage
That's a good
minimum.
one too.
Okay.
Had a brutal property, but for you only thing. But yeah, the big weapons are very appropriate, and it fits in with the class features.
Oh, and just for personal use, I do have to say this just one time: breaching clear.
For that.
That was a joke for just one person.
Oh, fantastic finale.
All right.
This is the
That was a
beginning.
good question, Noah.
Oh yes, very good question. Thank you.
Any more questions from that one? Because I have a couple here that we could answer just to like get it going.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, what do you find is the most difficult thing when you're first trying to start really putting down pen to paper on a campaign you're working on? Not a one-shot, I mean a full-blown campaign.
Kind of the overarching plot and how I want the players to fit into it. Usually you have like your big idea, you have your vision of it, but as soon as you put players and players' minds into this, they are not going to follow this amazingly crafted vision you have. They are going to shatter it, turn it into a stained glass picture that you don't really know what it is, but it's something. And you gotta just kind of enjoy that stained glass picture.
That sounded a little bitter.
Yeah, a little bit.
You said the most difficult part?
Yeah, what is the most difficult part when you're first starting to put together a campaign?
Mine would be the Pantheon.
The Pantheon?
Yeah, deciding which gods I want, to what extent, how many, a lot, little, because I know if I'm going to have a cleric, a paladin, or any divine class, I need to provide that, and if they have something they want to bring in, how does that fit in? But that's usually the harder part for me. The rest, a little loosey-goosey on that stuff. Yeah?
So would you rather than start in a world that's already been created?
Depends.
And run a campaign in that than to start from scratch with a whole new world?
I have enjoyed running modules and worlds created just from combining modules. I have designed an entire homebrew with just start to end, just I made all up. And while the complete homebrew is, when you accomplish it and get through it, it can be very rewarding. Using pre-generated is a lot easier if you have a little bit crunched for time, or if you're dealing with a lot of new players. It helps because then you have definitively balanced encounters and a variety of things depending on which modules you use. Never use the Doom Vault in the campaign. In the middle of the campaign, you'll burn out. I learned that one the hard way.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
But that's an excellent question, actually. Anyone have anything else so far?
I've got more, they don't.
Well, I mean, I didn't get to answer the question I
sorry.
asked.
I am sorry, man. Go for it.
That's all right with you guys. Literally, the hardest part of setting up any actual campaign, especially with a group of people you know really well, is having to have the information available to answer questions you never thought you'd need to answer. Like, is there Earth-like gravity? What is the distance between your planet and the center star of the planet that your planet surrounds? Stuff like that. You will get these crazy questions like, but are there clouds on this planet? What is the water? Is it saline? Is it clean? Are there sea urchins? Every question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still surprised that one came up, but yeah.
Well, I asked the question, so yeah, it'll come.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But you said you had a question, actually?
Nobody else does. I'm not gonna.
No, feel free to ask questions.
Yes, it's all-
It's ask a DM, not
Yeah.
DM ask himself.
So as far as doing a homebrew world, what do you find the easiest and the most difficult to do?
When you're doing something that big, you kind of want to start, in my opinion, macro and then go to micro. So kind of figure out, like he was saying, your pantheon. What are your bigger aspects? What is the history that led up to these events? Because once you get that like overarching large piece of your lore done, you can kind of put the other puzzle pieces in. Like, where are your cities? What capitals are there? What kind of kingdoms are there? What are their cultures? What kind of monsters do you have in certain areas? And like I said, the monsters can come from, oh, well, back in ancient times, there was the god of goblins and the god of dragons, and they fought. So there's this massive area where there's a bunch of kobolds and a bunch of goblins who are having wars with each other.
Is
And-
everybody okay with the fact that Joshua doesn't have a microphone too?
Good?
Or
Can you hear me?
anybody having trouble hearing? Okay,
Yeah?
good.
Cool. I'm very loud. It helps, which these people know very well. Yeah, you can have those unexpected pieces of the macro come into the micro and give you really cool combinations of things you wouldn't have thought of.
And the hardest?
And the hardest part about the home brewing, it is that when you're going from the larger picture to the smaller picture, it is hard to get all your puzzle pieces to fit correctly. I've been developing a homebrew campaign recently, and I have these really big characters I want to be a part of the lore. But while they are very interesting, they don't work together. They don't work in this world together. They wouldn't exist together. So I have to figure out how would I chip away at what they are to make them fit. And with that process, you do get interesting results, but it is very long and laborious to get things to finally like press in and be good to go for when you're ready to give it to your players.
The easiest for me is actually the villain. Whatever the villain is, whatever the conflict, the threat, I usually start with that first and build around that. So if it's an archdevil has escaped into the material plane and is wreaking havoc on a kingdom, there's my conflict, there's my main threat. I can now make the rest of the world kind of react around to it and then build from there. I mentioned prior that I find the Pantheon to be the hardest because of, I like to start opposite of him actually, where I start in the micro and sort of build my way out. But
I feel like I should be answering that I start from the center and work my way around, just not to agree with everybody. But for me, the easiest thing is actually making the story from beginning to end. Like I can like give you the timeline of the whole story and where I'd like it to be, because I like to hit certain points, and at this certain point something happens. But I'm more of an idea guy than these two. I can just, oh, okay, so, let's do this campaign. So basically the starting story is all of this, and hopefully it's going to lead to here, 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 and here. And the hardest part of homebrewing a campaign is deciding how big I'm going to decide to make that sandbox they're playing in. Because it's like, okay, well, is it going to be the city? Is it going to be the continent, the planet? Are we going to go to other planets? Are we going to other dimensions? Are we going to go to the Nine Hells? I have to decide exactly how far I'm going to let that party be able to move freely before it's going to affect story.
Yeah, size is important, understanding how big you want your world to be. If you make it too big, then you can make it feel very empty. And if you make it too small, it'll feel very constrained.
Yes, thank you.
that's a good question then.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I got one. So I got a player. We're in our second campaign over 4 years, but this is the first time this player's played in our group.
Okay.
Never played before, mid-40s. Cannot help but never roll below an 18, which I don't really care about. I still don't understand the logic of it. My issue is they don't lie fast enough. They take like 30 seconds to figure out that they rolled an 18 and then what the numbers are. And I'm like, just give me the number. I'll fudge the hit points back if you're gonna hit. But what is the psychology when, if you guys know, when people are cheating, and then how would you politely say, just cheat faster? I don't really care.
I'd like to take this one first.
Go for it.
The philosophy, the actual mindset behind the person is they actually think they can win D&D.
Fair to
which
say.
there is no such thing as winning. It's about the story.
Yeah.
And
Very good.
the first thing I would say to them is like, hey man, we can just do a point buy if you would like to relax a little on the dice rolls.
Yeah.
I'll even give you +5 points just to stop doing this slowly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's always tough when you come across that problem.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, but yeah, I agree with Tom that it does come from the mindset of trying to win. And they think that, they forget that the failures are just as fun as the successes. And then if you have nothing but success, it gets boring. Now granted, if you have nothing but failures, it gets frustrating.
Yeah.
But when you have the nice middle ground, that's where the most fun comes from. But some people are just hyper competitive and they have to get that. They got to make that moment count. They have to just get that roll in so this thing will happen as they think it has to happen. Not knowing the DM might have an alternative path already planned on the failure. Honestly, when it comes to that, I would approach communication, and then I mean the point buys are great for stat generation,
Yeah.
or use my dice. Roll right here. Let's see what you got.
Yeah.
And if need be, digital formats, because that RNG is pretty set, and they can't fudge that because you see the actual algorithm, like on Roll20.
Yeah.
You see what it does.
Oh, and if you really want to mess with that person, they make some dice from a company called Dice Gods. When you roll them, they speak out the number rolled.
Oh, wow.
That's actually
Yeah, they are a match set and of D6s that will speak out the number rolled.
that's very
Pretty
cool.
cool.
So, oh yeah, good luck fudging that. It just told me.
What about you, Josh?
When it comes to cheating, I think it does come from the mindset to win, but it also comes from the mindset of being lazy. To fudge your dice rolls like that, it's just like, oh, I'm just gonna say yes, I win. Yes, I win. Yes, I win. No matter what's on the dice, we're good. And as a DM, you need to kind of confront that person early. Don't do it in front of everyone else. Don't try to put the light on them and say, oh, you're cheating. Like, just pull aside, say, I understand what you might be thinking about this, but it takes away the fun from everyone else, because it's obvious a lot of times. We've all had that day where you're sitting, someone's playing, and all of a sudden they're never missing, they're never losing, and you're just sitting there like, well, here I am, I'm rolling awful. Why don't I just do that? And that kind of gives that thought to every other player at the table, like, why don't I just do that? Because if he can do it, why can't I do it? So as a DM, you need to step in quickly and be like, hey, please don't do that, or we're going to have a very serious discussion whether you're going to stay at the table or not, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, going off of that, I've been a part of online debates where people are asking if DMs should be able to fudge their die rolls. And during those debates, I noticed some of the players were calling out saying, well, why do they get to do it? Not understanding that that's a DM's tool to keep the story going and hitting certain key points and to try to keep the fun. And they see it as an unfair thing.
Yeah. We get to fudge dice rolls to not kill you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if all else fails, communication, trying to reduce the chance of cheating, and they still just want to keep doing it, then sometimes you say, look, if you're going to keep doing this, you're not welcome to play it. We'll play other games. We'll play cards, sure, but I can't have that at the table. It's not fair to everyone else.
I will just treat it like the way when people talk about dating, it's like, how many people have you been with? And always deduct 5 or divide by 4, and that's a great way to do it. To be like, oh yeah, I rolled an 18. Okay, you rolled a 4.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That's a good question.
Yeah, very good. Yep.
To piggyback up that, you were talking about action economy over here, we were talking about fudging dice rolls. I've had recently, in the current campaign I'm running, 2 encounters that stick out in my mind where the players came across a low level, should have been, according to the CRs, should have been an easy combat that nearly killed them, and then they run over a 12 CR or whatever. Other than fudging dice rolls, adding hit points and things like that, and I guess maybe this is a 2-part question. 1, any other tips on how to do that, other than fudging dice rolls? And then how do you handle that when expert player at the table can tell you that, oh, well, that goblin just took 34 points of damage. Why aren't they dead yet?
Yeah.
Well, to start, one of the tips I like to use when they're like this monster is running them over, and I learned this from somebody else sitting at this table with dark hair and glasses. I'm not going to mention any names, but basically instead of putting in a hit point pool, because they don't know what the number's supposed to be, putting in if this guy gets hit 4 more times, he's going down. So all they got to do is hit him 4 more times and he's dropping. Is a great way to control if I don't pull this guy back, he's going to destroy them.
Right.
And hold on, it's going to come to be the second part of the question.
Basically, just both ways. Like when you've got a group that is being overpowered,
Yeah.
and
And
then
the
when they
CR
are
aspect,
overpowering
yeah.
something that should be harder.
When they're completely overpowering something that should be harder, and basically, I will start, for the most part, making it stronger. It's like I'm going to add +2 to my die rolls to hit. I'm going to start adding +2 to the damage, and we'll just increase as needed. And if a player ever asks me, it's like, oh, well, this guy's supposed to have 34 hit points. I'm like,
Yeah.
normally.
Right.
It's always a fun one to throw out.
Even class points.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is half bard, half sorcerer.
One
goblin.
thing I've learned from DMing 5e, Pathfinder, other games, is that, especially in D&D, the CR, I don't know if that thing has been accurate for ever. With 5th edition in particular, I don't even look at CR. I look at what can the creature do, what kind of special effects does it have, and what can my party do, what can they take. So if I know, like I mentioned earlier about the scouts on a level 1 party, they have 2 attacks and they have a longbow, which means they're out of range of most of the players. So even on statistically, they only hit part of the time as they're approaching, there's a chance they're going to drop the players, because most of the characters could only have, in D&D, at most starting 18 hit points. You'd have to be a Dragonborn sorcerer for an extra hit point, or you could do toughness probably technically, but either way, you'd have to have a combination of that and be like a barbarian with constitution. Well, no, you couldn't be the sorcerer then, but yeah. So either way, they're not having 20 or more hit points. So few hits, they're dropped. Few hits, they drop.
On top of that, number of attacks the enemy has versus the number of attacks the players have. You've got 5 players, you don't want to send 3 bow-wielding soldiers with 2 attacks each and 60-foot distance, because now it's going to take them 2 rounds just to get over there.
Yeah. And as for the 2 curb stomp scenarios, sometimes if I design a counter, I think it's going to be more challenging, it should be on paper, and they just clear it easily, I let them have that victory. But I might make note that, like when they're looting the body, that it looked sickly, or they find something off about it. Like, hey, and by that, this doesn't normally happen, and you can even use that as a potential plot hook into something else, or have them develop their own plot hook that leads into whatever story you're running.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I was using a kind of a homebrewed monster, and they just slaughtered the thing. And I worked it into the story later on that was a juvenile.
There you go. Yeah.
So hopefully I get to reuse that monster again.
Yeah, that's another way to do it. What about you, Josh?
I usually like to go with the flow of the dice. Sometimes characters will get very lucky, and sometimes a combat can be super easy, and that's just how the dice rolled. Other times you're going to get destroyed. That's just, again, it's the luck of the dice. If you are having a combat encounter where it feels too easy, one of the best ways to do is reinforcements. If it's a goblin camp, well, here's some warg riders. They heard a call, they heard a horn. You could have one of the goblins pull a war horn out of their belt, blow it as their action, and now there's the player's warning that, hey, something else might be coming. Now, keep it balanced. When something is too strong, you can always use the old DM trick of fudging dice. And that kind of feels a little less, I can't think of the word, but good, essentially. But
Bad.
Bad, thank you. That does feel bad. But sometimes that is just what you have to do. Yeah, that's what I got for it.
Quick question, though. So, yeah.
At what level do you start giving magic items to players, and how do you balance them among the table so no one's getting like jealous of Steve or Bob or whoever's getting stronger stuff?
Loot distribution, I got you.
Yeah, that's a difficult question. It definitely depends on what edition you're playing as well. Because, 5th edition items are much different than Pathfinder items. And the rules are so varied on it. It's very much just a slow process of kind of, do things, touch things, give them things here, there. Giving them kind of useless items is okay, like, boots of water walking. When are those going to be useful? Not always, but the one time they are useful, they'll remember that.
I usually keep the tiers of gameplay in mind. So like 1 through 4 is heroic. I think 5 through 9 or 11 is the next tier. And then up until 16 is the third, and the last tier is 17 through 20. And those first 4 levels, using 5th edition Magic Item Rarity, I usually stick with maybe common items can be found, and title common, but that the party may not have enough gold until 2nd or 3rd level. So like in his campaign where we're running, we just got paid a decent amount, but it's only enough to where collectively we could buy maybe a +1 weapon or armor. So as I've advised the new players, hey, maybe get a few smaller things and we'll save up, and then we start getting the gear that we're really going to need. But as for distribution and loot, as it continues on, I start letting them get more power if it's needed, especially. Like, oh wow, all these monsters take half damage on non-magic damage, and most of the party can't do that yet. That's maybe an enchanted blade. It doesn't get a +1, but it just count as magic for damage resistant
Yeah,
purposes.
I believe 3.5, they used to call that masterwork.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, when it comes to the actual distribution of loot, funny answer, start at level 1, everything's available, and just kill individual players off quickly who get too many magic items.
Wait,
The loot will disperse itself.
did you mean characters or players?
You heard me. And the honest answer is anything with more of a utility magic item, your uncommon, common magic items like Wands of Healing are really great to have, but everybody knows you can't really use them often in combat because you're burning attacks every time. So those I try to give out a little more willingly than I would say, the +5 bastard sword of I didn't know my mom. Yeah.
There's also an opposite approach too that I've done once as a player, where the DM gave us powerful magic items that gave us our class levels. But at the same time, it put a bullseye on our backs. So we were now targeted by entities that wanted those items. So it moved the plot along, and it made us feel like, at first, like, oh wow, we're really powerful. But then the bigger guns came after us. So it gave a little urgency and adaptability and creativity in that regard.
One of the things I will say is it never hurts if you realize you gave your player a item that is way too powerful for them to come up with somebody else who also got an item way more powerful than it should be. Now, here's the shopkeeper with the +5 club of, but I knew your dad.
Yeah. You could also, if you give something too strong to someone, let's say you give a sword that explodes when it touches evil things, and you realize maybe that is too powerful to give a lower level party. What you can do is that over time, as they use the sword, it loses power. It gets weaker, and you can add that to it. Add that so that is an element of the sword. It makes it more interesting. How many uses of the sword you have? Every time you use it, it does get weaker. So at a certain point, is it even worth carrying around anymore? Yeah. There are a lot of different ways you can kind of restrict or change the items around to fit your purposes.
And you can also just talk to the party if you made a mistake too.
Oh,
Like,
that's
hey, that's going to be a little too powerful for this, so for the sake of fun, we're going to dwindle down, and probably use that as an in-game explanation is something I would approach it with.
Well, by the way, what I heard that guy at the end, Joshua, say there is that a blade that explodes when it hits something evil. Now, if I don't create the Paladin Kamikaze blade one time in my life, you'd be surprised.
Yeah. Did you have a question?
Yeah, so I haven't actually run a campaign
Mhm.
thinking we take turns, we'll run multiple campaigns consecutively so that, you know, no one gets burnt out from DMing and we can all kind of like play together. And I'm thinking it's kind of my time to run one. I have two players who, no matter what we're doing, their characters bicker, role play all the time. Like, they just argue and it soaks up all the time. How can we manage that? Because I don't want that to take up all of our time anymore.
So are the players themselves bickering, or is it they're bickering in character? Okay.
I like all the time.
Yeah.
So these two gentlemen, one was a barbarian, one was a cleric,
Yeah.
that in our Pathfinder game got into a lot of arguing matches, and
Yeah. We almost killed each other twice. 3 times maybe?
Well, yeah, but he's talking about our characters.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
but I
more.
mean, like, they'll argue about the same thing for like 20+ minutes, and
Ah.
I see the rest of the table like get bored, and they're just kind of like sucking up all of our time.
What you can do as a DM, you are the leader, you are in charge of the table. If it gets to a point where they're, droning on, just step in. Tell them, all right. Just tell them to either, close up the argument, or what is everyone else doing during their arguing. That's the easiest way to do it. Just say, okay, guys, hold off. What are you guys doing while they are arguing? And that gives everyone else a chance to speak up and talk about what they want to do.
I've also been known to institute a roll-off in order to settle disagreements. It's like, oh, hey, I want it, but I want it, but I want it, but I deserve it, but I deserve it. All right, both of you, roll a d20, winner gets it.
Like, I'm almost tempted to like make bad things happen when they fight.
You can totally do that as well.
Players'
Yes.
tears are delicious.
Yes, as
Like, someone hears you arguing, and they're like, I don't know, like.
I mean, well, if they're arguing in a dungeon, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you're arguing in an area where they're maybe have a bad reputation, or even wanted, or there might be bounties out for them, someone might notice, oh wait, they look like those people, and you can then interject that argument with something else. But also you can just say, hey guys, calm down. Let's resolve this and let's move on and everyone else have some fun. But I agree a lot with Josh on the, whatever else you guys doing while you two are having this argument, that basically, like, shush, now what are you guys doing?
Oh, another trick to throw them off of their argument. I mentioned this the last night for a different question. It works great. When they start arguing, just go, hey, can you guys roll a perception check real quick? And no matter what they say, just write down, go, interesting. Watch them shut up and go, wait, no, but what? Why? What happened? What's coming? I call that an anxiety roll. It's perfect.
Yeah, that's the question.
All right, so I wanted to start playing Pathfinder, but I have a lot of 5e stuff. How, more specifically, how do you translate things like monsters and stuff from 5e side into Pathfinder, or a similar kind of approach?
I would look, if you're translating the monsters from 5e to Pathfinder, there are monster manuals for either side. I would review and make sure that the monsters after the conversion are the same kind of things you'd want in your campaign. And if not, to look around the monster manual and see if there's something that works better for you. Sometimes you'd want that like 1-to-1 switch, but because there's just such different editions, it's not going to do that. And if it comes to it, you might just want to sit down and like rewrite what you have, just with that idea in mind.
Yeah, keep in mind the power scaling, since Pathfinder is basically 3.5, it's a lot more than 5th edition. There's no bounded accuracy, stats go well above the 20, and for example, a ancient dragon have auras of their element. When you're within that aura and you attack them, or they attack you, the player takes usually 2d6 of that element's damage. 5th edition dragons don't have that. These dragons get their breath attacks usually a lot more. They have multi-attack, they have all this stuff. But in case of converting, I would say, and this is a Pathfinder specifically calls it out in magic item creation, look for something similar and you can just reskin it. But if there is a unique creature that you want to bring over, sometimes it does translate well, sometimes not.
This is gonna sound like a joke, but not, but like Reddit. Subreddit. Every creature you've ever wanted to convert from one type of setting to another, there's a subreddit for it of people who've already argued every side, and I can just look through and go, oh, so that's how I make Santa Claus a paladin. Perfect.
Also, as advice on playing, going from 5th edition to Pathfinder, limit the amount of source material. Build into the other, because there's a lot, like 3.5, a lot of splat books. Some are very powerful. In fact, it's where the whole the class tier system came from, was the 3.5 era, where, well, these classes are tier 5, they're okay. These ones are tier 4, they're better. You don't want players who are playing tier 1 and everyone else playing tier 5. It gets very imbalanced, and a lot of people don't have as much fun. Same thing with creatures, same thing with the items, just kind of keep that in mind.
Oh, and if you are going to run a Pathfinder game, the one thing you should bring with you from your 5e is broken movement. I have got so much annoyance out of, wait, but I still have stuff I can do, but I can't get over there to do it. But I still have movement left, and I didn't take a feat, and this BS, man.
Yeah, broken movement, definitely one thing 5e did, I think.
Yeah.
Great.
Every edition with should have broken movement.
Yeah, excellent question.
Any other
Anyone so far?
Ooh.
This might just be a pet peeve of mine, but how do you handle characters or players who are, how can I say this? For example, I've got a guy who plays a barbarian with like a 6 or a 7 intelligence, but somehow he's the smart guy at the table. I mean, is that just me being,
It's understandable. When you generate stats, the stats reflect the character, and it can be frustrating as a player, like if you're really good with puzzles in general, but then you're playing a lower intelligent character, it's like, how do you justify that? And you can work with the player on, look, when it comes to these things, yes, it's like your barbarian's side hobby, his Zen. But then other things like historical, these things, that, other knowledge checks, you have to hit that penalty, you're not going to know the answer. You can also ask them to try, hey, kind of tone it down a little bit, but I get it, yeah, it can be
He's a
tough.
very experienced player who's been playing for a long time. And it's like, I want to tell him, hey, can you dial it back and not be that strong player? Let some of these other
I mean,
guys have a
also, you
chance.
could try to have them lean into the lower intelligence.
Yeah.
Like, hey, try that, just push the button. You know the button's bad as a player, but your character doesn't.
Right.
See what happens.
Right.
Yeah. And there is a distinctive line between a player and a character, because a player, like you said, can be very intelligent,
Right.
and the character could be not as intelligent. Or you could have a character who's supposed to be very intelligent, and the player himself is a rock. So you kind of just have to work that in. If the barbarian is solving puzzles, as a DM, you could, what does that mean? Problem failed successfully? Yeah, problem failed successfully.
Yeah.
Essentially, if the barbarian solved the puzzle, you could make it so that he accidentally solved the puzzle by maybe pushing the right thing into place. Maybe he bashed the wall in just the right spot that clicked the puzzle into place. Yeah, just kind of put it through there. You can't stop a player from trying to help other players solve a puzzle, so you just kind of have to mold the actual summary of how they solve the puzzle so it works.
And never be afraid to ask that barbarian who's way smarter than the barbarian he's playing. And how would your character know that?
Right.
And how would you be aware of this information? And then so that way he can at least explain. It's like, yes, I do not know how to read. That does not mean I have never been in a dungeon and therefore do not understand if I keep my hand along the right side of the wall, I'll eventually find my way out.
Any other
Make them
questions?
do the work for you.
Questions? Hand raising? Hello? Possibly?
I have a question. How come hot dogs come in packs of 8 and the buns come in packs of 10?
Marketing. Yes.
It's not an answer.
I've been part of groups, and this isn't a knock on anybody that has it, but that have ADHD, and so they'll get sidetracked for hours and tangents. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is some useful tips to kind of help them kind of like get back without sounding like a jerk doing it?
I would like to answer this question for him, thank you.
Yeah.
When it pertains to their character, address them directly. Do not monologue too long or they will drift off.
Okay.
And make sure that they are aware that of crucial plot details. Because sometimes you do just have to let that horse buck and just like, yep, nope, they're in their world, let them be. But you got to be like, hey Josh, so I want you to know that your character's getting ready to heal. And so if I keep talking like this for a long period of time like this, eventually Josh will stop looking at me and he'll start looking at his phone because I'm not talking about him directly, and I'll have to go, Jack, over here, come on,
Oh,
come on. But I mean, I'm only saying that because I'm about the hardest person in the world to keep the attention of for longer than 5 seconds. I'm sorry, what was your question? Go ahead.
Another trick we tried in our last major campaign was assigning roles. So I did the bookkeeping for inventory. One player, she's really good at taking notes, she did the notes. One of our players who has a similar problem you're describing, he was supposed to keep track of the calendar. Because, well, it made us think we had a time frame, yeah, but
ADHD.
barbarian
Hot.
playing wizard.
Yeah, but real life barbarian playing wizard there. Like, he forgot that he forgot to forget his badge. So, yeah, like, and I mean that. It's like, oh, you know what? I have my badge, but I'm probably going to forget it. But, I'm probably going to forget that I forgot it. You know what? I forgot that I was going to forget that I forgot it.
For me, I also have that same problem. I'll be sitting there and I'll be doing my utmost to pay attention. But then there's a shiny thing on the ground. All right. And then you try to come back and you try to, successfully hear what's going on. But then, oh, my dice are shiny. And then you come back and then something is happening. You don't know what's going on. And as a player, you're trying to struggle to catch up. As a DM, just kind of repeat yourself. That's fine. If a character is, kind of spanning off, you can kind of just call them out directly. Say, oh, what are you doing? That's the easiest hook you have as a DM. What are you doing? They'll turn up, they'll look usually confused, and then you just be like, well, this is happening to you. What would you like to do about it? And then I'll get them on track again.
Also tone, how you're describing everything. If you have ambient like music, that can also help keep them focused a bit. Because if it's just like, so you guys see 3 doors and this and that, they might go, okay, whatever, we'll get there. And it's like, okay, so you hear a ticking and parts of the walls are starting to open. There's 3 doors in front of you. What are you doing? I guarantee you're going to have their attention more than the first example. So that also can help too. Yeah.
And don't slap your mic.
Yeah, don't slap the mic.
Yeah, things to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Because once again, that'll make me, what?
Yeah.
No, but great question. Thank you.
All right.
Also, hourglasses.
Those
I
are-
love pulling out
Put
hours
shot clocks in?
and just like, how are you guys doing? What's that for?
Minute glasses.
And just occasionally, and just roll a die. There's actually a particular dungeon in Yawning Portal that there's a room that it tells you to do that.
Oh, wow.
And it's a series of traps that go off, and you just describe it here, you start hearing ticking, and you put an hourglass out, and it causes exactly what the book predicts, and the players start panicking. It was a very fun room, actually. Any other Yep.
I've got my party's like 3 out of 5 of them have some healing capacity. Like, how can I make them have like a, oh shit, like someone's about to die without like doing the stereotypical anti-magic field or some stuff like that?
That was my exact answer.
Mummy.
There's another spell, Pathfinder. Keep that in note. Source Severance. It's anti-magic field, but you can only choose Divine or Arcane. So if you have a Divine caster who is always healing, have someone walk up with that on. And the wizards can still fire their spells, but the cleric is standing there going, oh no. Distance is good. How you're moving your enemies is also good. If they know there is a cleric who can heal, they're going to target that cleric who can heal. Because you have to remember that your enemies are smart, or the people you're playing are smart. They have intelligence, unless they don't, depending on what your creature you're playing. But it keeps someone from having, just from having a bunch of heal bots, attack those heal bots and make them heal themselves, essentially.
Yeah, sure. I find, well, what my forever DM actually does all the time is if you start spamming something a little too hard, he figures out a way to get around it, get through it, and then annoy the heck out of you. So what he would probably end up doing is, oh, you're gonna use anti-magic field? This is supernatural, not magical. Or this is natural, so therefore not magical, so that doesn't affect. Oh, you have magical healing? But that's gonna require, revivification or restitution or any individual, well, special thought out spells that aren't in any book I've ever read.
A great way to do it too is environment. One of our final fights in our long-running campaign, I was a cleric. I had an ability called Channel. When I channeled, it did a massive burst of positive energy that both healed and harmed undead. Well, I knew we were fighting a bunch of undead at the end. I was very excited about this fact. Then he put us on the negative energy plane, who has a property that basically cancels that effect. Do that to your players. Put them in a spot where those abilities will not be that helpful, and make them have to think a way around that.
That actually leads me into my answer on this. Now, granted, that and this, I would not spam all the time, but to give them a challenge, upon playing Baldur's Gate 3, I overlooked, a cantrip I overlooked, or a spell, Bone Chill. And I was reminded that one causes healing to not work for a turn. And it's a very simple spell that you can give some enemies or effects like that. Or maybe there's some sort of strange aura in this particular this place that healing takes more to heal or it's less effective. So let's say they do, on average, they heal 10 hit points. They only heal 5.
Yeah, what was that radiation from Pathfinder again?
Uh,
Blight? Or...
Blightburn was one of them.
Yeah, Blightburn, yeah.
There's also like diseases that can cause healing to be less effective. You can reduce like maximum hit points because of certain things. Like I said, I wouldn't do this all the time because then you're basically like, hey, you know that cool thing you guys are doing as a team? Not anymore. But to give them a challenge, throw it out occasionally, and you can get the hint that, like let's say the clerics of insert the main pantheon that they work with, they have not been able to take back this from the dark forces. They're not as effective there. They don't want to go in. That's a way to kind of hint, hey, something's not going to be what you normally think.
Yeah. And you can also build that challenge, going off that example. As they get closer to the keep where this is happening, the effect starts at a lower level and increases as they get closer. So the castle itself, the aura is to a point where healing is basically ineffective. But maybe 300 feet out, it's less, half effective. And then as they get in, it gets incrementally stronger. And that, gives the warning to the players. They can think about what they're going to do, and they can plan for that. Instead of you just, they're driving along, you throw a wall in front of them, and then they're like, well, that thing doesn't work anymore. And you're just like, figure it out.
I would also potentially, in that kind of scenario, put in a key MacGuffin that's causing the effect. So if the players find it, they can disable it. And it gives that extra thrill and like that puzzle element to this fight that now, hey, everything's back online. We can do this. A boss battle I created for my first 5th edition campaign, actually, I had this 4-tiered room with 4 different corners. They came through the center, and then there was this tower up here. And I had 4 orbs here and 1 orb here. These 4 kept summoning elementals of each variety. Now, these were, to use a 4th edition term, minions. So one hit, they die, but they still do effective damage. Each round, more and more and more. The players finally figured out, wait, the orbs are causing these things. So they started attacking the orbs, which then all of a sudden, only these 3 are now summoning. And it gave them that extra element to work with. Now, they could have kept just attacking the elements all day and eventually worked their way to the top and stopped the main threat, but they focused on that puzzle part. So, something to keep in mind on that.
That actually reminds me of something I wanted to bring up for every aspiring and or currently in process DM. When it comes to describing the world that your players are in, please try to be consistent, because if you give like a piece of art on the wall that's not good for anything or does anything, a little more effective description, your players will start trying to dig through that wall, or break that wall, or smash the wall, or try to decipher the secrets of this wall. Would you agree with that, Blake?
It was an Easter egg to Mario 64 and the Endless Staircase. It was a looping stairwell, and they spent the entire session on this.
No, we're not talking like an hour.
entire
We're talking
session.
The entire session, yep.
2.5 hours they were in this endless staircase trying to figure out the clues. The clue was to get off the staircase.
Yeah, that was my fault. I should have nipped that one in the bud and be like, no, it's just this,
No.
moving on.
Yeah.
No, legitimately, he's like, okay, you're walking through a stone hallway. There's carpet under you. Against the wall, you see this wonderful alfresco picture with a doorknob, and there's little faces right here, here, and here, and they're ghost-shaped. And there's art along the side. There's a little filigree inside the stonework. Now, should I have been looking at the carpet or the hallway? No, I went for this thing. He took a full 30-second description to do.
Yeah.
Nothing.
All right.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Little
Any other
trigger.
questions?
Anyone over there with an idea?
How would you incentivize players to use like cursed items that are useful or magic items that have a penalty?
Don't tell them they're cursed, and don't tell them the penalty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a player in one of our campaigns find basically a gun, and he picked this thing up, and he couldn't put it down. It did 1 damage. That's it. No matter what you were doing, 1 damage. Couldn't put it down. If he tried to put it away and do something else, it would appear back in his hand. And he had no idea that this is a cursed item that only does 1 damage. It's holding on the whole time. Until one day, he's looking at this item and he goes, boy, I wish I knew what this did. And he immediately knew exactly what it did. It gives you 1 wish.
Yep. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Didn't realize we got there. I had fun.
What are you talking about? It's only 6:47.
We'll be out there if you guys want to ask any further questions. This way they can run their next panels.
All right, I will also
But
be
yeah,
out
if you
there
want us
if
up
you
there.
don't want to ask any questions.
That's it.
It is not conducive on
Thanks,
whether or not
everybody.
you have questions. Every time I leave here, I don't see anybody clapping.